the teachers are sort of, it sounds funny to say cultivated because you sort of don't think of people, but they've been curated and chosen and kept and loved and embraced so that they stay at the school. So the teachers are caring and available to speak to you, and really cared about each individual student, truthfully really care about them.
Bannockburn School in North York, Ontario offers Montessori education for kids from the toddler years through to grade 6. When her family first toured the school, Raewyn Seaberg tells me it was love at first sight. Now, she's had 3 kids go through Bannockburn, and though she used to wonder whether it was worth it to invest in education from such a young age, Raewyn says now that looking back, she can see that it was the best investment her family ever made.
Raewyn, let me ask you, when did your family's relationship with Bannockburn begin?
So in 2010, we moved to the area, and my eldest son was just turning 2 at the time, and we were looking for a program for him to go to during the day to be engaged with other children, and looked at a bunch of different options. And Bannockburn was sort of in the neighborhood and had a toddler program that was 5 days a week and like a half-day morning program. And so we went to go look there, and honestly, it was truthfully love at first sight with the toddler physical environment. Huge, beautiful, gorgeous, brightly lit with natural light rooms with everything perfect, child size, wonderful small wooden tables and beautiful little materials. And so that's so how he started. And then when his sister came along, we were happy with everything for him, and she needed to do everything he did. And so of course, she went as well. And then, by that point, we were still in the neighborhood and well kind of entrenched in the school and in the Montessori philosophy. And so then my third went there as well. I will say it was a little bit accidental because we weren't specifically looking for Montessori. I didn't go to a Montessori school myself. So it was sort of learning about Montessori as we went, but we did really like it, and the children loved it. So it just sort of started that way, almost by accident, discovering it.
When you were first looking for that right school, what were the boxes you were trying to tick?
So this was when he was little. So it was really, we weren't looking particularly at academics. We didn't know how long we would stay at the school. So if we were looking with older children, it might have been different things, but we were looking for caring teachers and, lots of personal attention. And it wasn't all play-based. There's a lot of informed thought into ages and stages of child development. When are they ready to work on fine motor, gross motor, all these kind of things. And the materials are all specifically designed for those different stages that they go through. So it was sort of, in addition to just the socializing with extra kids and the caring teacher and a safe place to go, there was sort of more than this sort of minimum thing that we've been looking for that I guess is sort of what impressed us with it.
You mentioned that Montessori was not something that you set out to find deliberately, but something that kind of found you. How has your understanding of the Montessori philosophy changed since that first impression?
Well, so I remember sort of hearing about Montessori, that there was such a thing. I was about the limit of my knowledge of it. And so I guess I kind of pictured it being like this chaotic sort of, you get to pick what you want to do and there's no structure. And I kind of pictured it being really, really unstructured, and it didn't, the thought of it, before I knew more about it, wasn't super appealing as its own thing. But it's actually very structured, so the children get choice in maybe what they do in any one moment or work cycle, but it's extremely structured, and the classrooms are very orderly, and even the toddler classrooms that you'd think would be loud and chaotic, they're extremely orderly. There's a huge emphasis on things like grace and courtesy and respect for others. There's a ton of things that I didn't know Montessori incorporated that are great. Multiple ages in the same classroom, you know, other students leading by example to the younger students. This sort of sensorial aspect of learning different things, like the math curriculum is very hands-on until these complex concepts are kind of concrete and in there, and then they move to abstract math. You know, like it was a whole new world. I really didn't have a good sense of what it was, and I would, anyone who's not sure about it, I'd say they should learn a little bit about it, because I really think that it would be suitable for way more children than what one would initially think, or what I initially thought.
Thinking of, you've got 3 kids who've gone through Bannockburn.
Yeah.
How different are each of them as students?
They're totally different. So, you know, even not just as students, but just as people, like you kind of wonder how can they all be from the same parents, that there's 3 kids that are so different. So I have 2 boys and a girl. The girl is my middle one, who's going to be going into grade 5. And they really are quite different. They're all good students in a sense, but their strengths and weaknesses are quite different. And so they really, and the teachers know each child so well, like not just my children, but all the children. And so they can really tailor the curriculum to them. And that's the other thing about Montessori too, is maybe there's somebody who's, you know, like my daughter, for example, loves language and arts related things and is very advanced in that way. So they allow her to kind of run with that. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't do math and geometry and all the other subject areas, because she does, and she keeps up with her peers, but there's a certain amount of tailoring of what your love is, with obviously certain requirements that everyone has to meet, you know, but they can be individual, you know, and they kind of, they celebrate the individuality of the students. So you know, you sort of think, well, could the same sort of approach suit 3 different kids? But it sort of does, because it's so malleable and individualized in some ways.
Let's dive into that a bit more. Can you think of maybe a memory or experience, an anecdote where Bannockburn's approach to education served up something that really fit the specific needs and interests of your different kids?
Oh, it's hard to pick a specific example. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I guess one way to put it, I think, is the sort of continuity of the curriculum. So I know I'm sounding general as opposed to specific, but truthfully, let's take any of them, the language curriculum, the math curriculum, whatever it is, it builds on each different stage. So in toddler, you know, they're playing with geometric shapes and maybe learning their names, just with or doing the puzzles where you have to fit different geometric shapes into a puzzle. And what they're really, the skill they're doing at that time is just fine motor, being able to put the pieces together. But then they go into primary, and then they learn the names of those shapes and they trace them, and then, you know, they go into elementary and they're doing the, you know, geometry and area and surface area, you know, like it all, and then there's continuity. So the same, for example, colors that represent vowels or consonants when you're first learning them in primary sort of carry all the way through, like, and build on each other. So it's not, that's what I really like. It's sort of, there's this age and stage specific focus, and, you know, they don't realize they're learning something that they're going to learn later on, and they're better for it, and they don't know it, you know, to the end of grade 6 where they're learning Pythagorean theorem, but they've been building shapes in primary that are exactly that concept, but they just don't know all the abstract theory behind it. I think that's what I love about it, that there's just this sort of such a, what can they absorb about it now? And even though they're going to have this motor memory of it later, like as an example for the math curriculum. So, and I think there's not, as, you know, as you're saying, sort of with specific to my kids and how they are as students, I don't think there's a child who wouldn't learn great that way, where it's presented to them multiple different times in multiple different ways, and what they're supposed to get out of it is a little bit of something different depending on the stage they're at.
You know, thinking of continuity, when you first started at Bannockburn, did you think you were going to be in it for the long haul? Were you thinking years and years ahead?
No, truthfully, so we kind of, we would sort of revisit it each year when we were sort of making the plans for the following September. Like, are we going to stay? Are we going to go? Is there a reason to go? Well, he's doing great, and then my daughter came along. Well, she's doing great too, and so it was sort of a year by year thing. And of course, my eldest son was sort of the trailblazer, because then you'd be in these different realms of the school that we hadn't experienced previously. And you sort of, but what there is available are these evenings where you can kind of go and see what the other classes are doing, ahead of you, for example. So this is going to suit me. Is this going to suit my child? And do I like it? And, having small kids there, but looking to seeing what they were doing in the lower elementary and upper elementary classrooms was like mind blowing. It's like, how are these children producing this amazing work? Like big reports and book reports and science fair projects and experiments and complex math concepts. And you just think, you look at your little toddler, little kind of grade 1 or grade 2 age, and it was like, yeah, I want that for them. So it was sort of that's sort of how we ended up staying. It's like, I love it. I like what they're getting now. And then when you have these little opportunities to look ahead at what the older classrooms were doing, it's like, wow, I would love for my child to be able to create that, or to learn that, or to have that experience with those teachers, who were pulling all this great work and motivating the older students. So that's kind of how we sort of were hooked in to kind of stay all the way through.
Raewyn, you were mentioning it was love at first sight, and obviously it was not just an infatuation. I'm wondering, what was it about the way the school engaged with your family and your students that made it a successful and blossoming relationship?
Yeah, so in addition to the sort of academic things that I mentioned about the way the curriculum's presented and the materials and those kind of things, some of the other things are the teachers. The teachers are sort of, it sounds funny to say cultivated, because you sort of don't think of people, but they've been curated and chosen and kept and loved and embraced so that they stay at the school. So the teachers are caring and available to speak to you, and really cared about each individual student, truthfully really care about them, as does the head of school, and even the administrative staff in the office, like, knows each child by name. Each child is greeted by the head of school, who's currently Miss Connor, when they come into the school in the morning. She knows every single person's name, all 200 students there. So there's that. And then there's kind of the non-academic things that I love that they teach, like self-esteem and respect for others, and enjoying learning, and promoting intellectual curiosity, so that you're not doing this because you have to or you were told to, but you want to figure out how that works, and they try to bring that out in the children. So, and diversity, like, we've got a hugely diverse population of students in terms of race and religion and every kind of family structure that you could think of, and they're celebrated. My children had a celebration for different religion, even in the primary ages. They celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah and Eid and, Diwali, like that they would come home with little projects they'd done about all these things. And just all of those things. It's, everyone is good. Everyone is accepted. We don't judge other people. We accept all the differences between people. Like, all that non-academic stuff in terms of how I want them to be as people, not just academically successful students, is really amazing. Truthfully, it's a strength for sure.
With that specifically in mind, what does it tell you about the culture and values at the school?
So, I mean, that's the key thing. Like, I think I'm probably not alone in being a parent who starts off in the toddler program, where you kind of, want a program of some sort for your child where they're meeting other kids and socializing. But even in that toddler room, it's, one of the big activities I remember when the kids were small was this sort of shared group snack, and everyone prepared it together as a group, and they learned to set their place settings, and they shared things and passed things together, and grace and courtesy even at that young age. And I think the toddler program starts even younger now than it did when we started, 12 months or 14 months, and they're teaching please and thank you and grace, all those kind of things. So like from an early age, all those things are important. Respect for ourselves and other people, and what's our place in the world, kind of thing. And the environment, there's a very kind of peaceful sort of quality that permeates through everything. That's again a Montessori based thing. Like Maria Montessori had that as one of the key values, sort of peace and respect for others and acceptance. That's lovely. And it's evident just walking into the school, the way you see students treat each other and the way teachers treat students, and in all directions. It's really nice. I know I'm sounding kind of almost corny and warm and fuzzy, but it's truthfully really, really beautiful.
What about, I want to ask, thinking of the education and experiences your kids have had at Bannockburn,
Yeah.
and thinking of your own experiences in your education at that age, is there anything that makes you jealous?
So, it's funny that you put it that way, because I'm going to these different curriculum nights and looking at, sort of you get lots of little windows into seeing the curriculum as the kids are learning, but when they sort of put it all together in this time frame where you go from toddler around and you see how the concepts carry through. For math, for me especially, I would have loved to learn math that way, where you skip count to learn your times tables. You start off skip counting, where there's these big chains that have 2 and then 2 and then 2, and you learn that 2 times 3 is 6, and just things that are just so concrete and volume you learn, because there's the physical shapes that have been built from 2-dimensional shapes into 3-dimensional shapes. Like the math and geometry, to learn it with this sort of solid concrete representation of things, I wish I would have learned it that way. I'm sure it would have stayed with me much, much better.
I want to rewind again to those first encounters you had with Bannockburn. What were the burning questions that you had to answer, that you weren't sure about and you were maybe rolling the dice on?
I guess it was just, not knowing about the Montessori philosophy and if it would suit each child. So I guess that was sort of the thing that we were kind of feeling like we were sort of monitoring as each one entered. Although by the time my third one went, I kind of had come to the realization that it can suit many, many children, if not all children, many, many children. But as my first was going through, we were sort of looking for, is he thriving? Is he enjoying going to school? He loved going to school, made good friends. He really enjoyed his teachers. There was never, I honestly, truthfully don't remember a single day where it was like a battle to get them out of bed to go to school. Like they loved to go to school. And so that was a key thing for me, that they're like, they're feeling comfortable and their self-esteem is good and their teachers are caring and they're making friends. So that was sort of where, like, are they thriving, to kind of put it in like a big sort of general word for it all, like academically, but also like socially and emotionally. Like, oh, they love going to school. And I think that's true for, I can't speak for every family, but I think that's true for most of the people there. Like, kids are excited to get to school. What more can you ask for, right? So that's kind of what we were looking for, making sure that was choosing into the different stages. Like, are they handling the work? Are they doing well? Are they happy? Are they kind of thriving? They were, right, and are. So.
Raewyn, you talked about how you would have that like check-in conversation every year. I'm wondering, that annual check-in, were there things that you observed changing and evolving at the school at that time? Maybe things they were working to improve or develop?
Yeah, so when we first started at this school, it was smaller even than it is. I think the student population was around maybe 85 or so, something like that. So fairly small, with a bit of like a pyramid shape where the older classes had fewer and fewer children. And so one of the things that was on our minds, and I'd say on my husband's mind in particular, because he was from a much larger school, was, are there enough kids? Are there enough peers? Is there enough, not just diversity, but like, are there just like enough people that they'll find someone interested in the same things as them, especially as they get through to the older ages where the classes were at that time quite small. So that was part of it. You know, it's like, who are their peers? Are these children still going to be at the school? What's the next class size? Do they have lots of opportunity for those things? So that was part of like the annual check-in, and one of, you know, partly through our time at the school, there was a lot of dramatic changes. The head of school changed with a whole new sort of energy, which was positive, and the school grew under her leadership and to the size it is now, which is I think a little bit over 200. And so even though there's you know, a slight shape like this, because there's some people who choose to leave for different reasons without going the whole way through. It's a bit more like this, so that, you know, by the time my son was going into upper elementary, he was with a good like cohort of kids. So the class that he graduated with were kids he's known since toddler, kind of thing, because they were families that sort of stayed all the way through. So that's one of the things that changed a lot, was the leadership at the school, which was transformative, I would say, and the student body growing as well.
What was that transformation? What did they fix with that change?
I mean, more students, sort of a little bit of a renewal of the staff, I guess I would say, with some new staff also kind of came along with that change, who were fantastic and who stayed at the school. So a real importance and stress on soliciting and maintaining like excellent teachers. So there was that, and then a focus on, I think, sort of raising the profile of the school. So the school does a lot of training of other Montessori teachers, as it turns out now, and there's people who you know, it has a more of an international even reputation, believe it or not, than it did before, with families that are moving to the GTA, researching and knowing about Bannockburn and seeing if it's a place for their kids, like as they move or before they move, kind of thing. That was not the profile of the school when we first started, you know.
What does that do specifically for the parent-school relationship?
In terms of the fact that it's a bigger school, or what?
In terms of the raising of profile and the changing of vibe that took place, how did that impact the relationship you as a parent and as a family had with the school?
Yeah, no, I think it was entirely positive. So it was probably, you know, a little bit on the too small side in some, you know, student groups initially. So we felt more confident as the class sizes grew and the student population grew, and we saw some of the teachers change. And so it, you know, it makes you feel good, because clearly some of the things that are important to you as a parent that you fed back are also in line with what the priorities of the new administration was, which was good. You know, having you know, such expansion. Like, I think when we started there were 2 toddler rooms, and now I believe there's 4. So, you know, just, you know, there was 2, possibly 3 primary rooms, and now there's 4. There was 1 lower elementary classroom, and there's 2 quite large classrooms now. So all those kind of things sort of make you feel, you know, make you feel good, I think. More, and then the other thing that grew with that was more opportunities for the kids. So the number of extracurricular programs increased, the opportunities for inter-school competitions increased, so there was enough children to have an elementary soccer team that could represent the school at other, you know, at independent school events. We always had cross country representation and track and field, but to have kids that were, you know, not just on the soccer team because there was 6 kids and then that's a team, but, you know, tryouts, like, you know, they've had to try out for the soccer team, try out for the basketball team, my children, you know. So the fact that there was an you know, enough population to generate some of those opportunities was you know, all the better.
Any of these extracurricular sports, events, any of them that were particularly impactful for your kids?
So my 3 kids are all and the schools allow them to be like this and which is one of our key things too, which is well-roundedness. So we, even though they've got their propensities of things they like, they all love sports. They all like various parts of the arts, and of course we want them to do, you know, well academically. So the things that they have loved and enjoyed, and all of them, all 3 of them, with my daughter with her competitive spirit probably being the most sort of competitive athletically. So you know, cleaning up every year at cross country and track and field, like you know, miles ahead, and having them all nurture that in her, and temper her competitive spirit with the other great values of being a good athlete, like sportsmanship and respect for others and fairness and all those kind of things. So that was great. Extracurriculars that they also really particularly loved is one at the school that's a drama program that is another company that comes into the school to do it with everyone, where every term they put on a musical. And it's like, at the end of it, it's in a theater, you know, with stadium type seating on a stage with lights and sound people. And that was amazing for them because public speaking, like I would never have gotten in front of anyone to public speak or sing in front of people when I was, you know, 6 years old when my daughter started doing that, right? And they all 3 of them have loved that. And so, and it was a really successful program at the school with lots of their friends doing it too. It was a big group, you know, and you had to try out for your roles again, you know, so it's not like you just show up and everything's great. Like I think a little bit of, you know, competition and you know, having to try out for something and maybe you don't get the role you wanted, but you get this other role and that's good. Like that program's taught them so much. So those kind of opportunities have been amazing.
Raewyn, I asked you earlier about things you'd seen improve in the past in your family's time at Bannockburn. I'd like to shift gears and look ahead. And to do this, I want to do a little thought experiment with you. I want to wave my magic wand and I want to make you head of school.
Okay.
We need to plan the next 5 to 10 years at Bannockburn. And I want to know a strength you would double down on, as well as a challenge you'd work to improve.
I mean, the strength I would double down on, I guess, would be, you know, ideally maybe even further expansion, and that would include the recruitment of more teachers, not because we need to replace any teachers, but just more of what is going so well, kind of thing. So there would be that, because I think Bannockburn does a lot of things amazingly well. The other thing that you know, I would like to see as a parent, and that if I was head of school, I would like to look at would be, would there be an opportunity to expand even into grades 7 and 8? Like I would, you know, you know, what they do up to grade 6 is amazing. Could they do amazing things in grade 7 and 8 with that age of kids in that stage? I think so, right? So it would be nice if that had been in place, because I would have probably kept them there, you know, 7 and 8 as well. And so opportunities for that kind of expansion, I think, would be good.
If I were to throw you a curveball, I'd also love to ask about, you know, an in a perfect world thing, something wild and crazy you would try in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, and we were, you know, sort of, it was on the radar, I would say, and now with this new imperfect world we have, I'm not sure where it will fall, but in a perfect world, I would just say that we would have, because we have I don't know if you know the physical space of Bannockburn, but we're on 5 acres, 3 of which are green, which is amazing, which, you know, few schools have, I would say. But if we could have, if I could wave a magic wand and change one thing, I would say that it would be, because the physical space of Bannockburn now, the building itself is beautiful. It's been beautifully tailored inside to very much Montessori type principles. But if we, could build a building from scratch with using that space differently, larger and, maybe, a larger gym and just like larger spaces, because as the school population has grown, I wouldn't say that we've outgrown the school, but there's been times that, we could have definitely used a bigger auditorium for graduation and some events where the whole school is there and a lot of parents are there, so a new, that would be what I would get with my magic wand, would be still tons of amazing green space, which we're lucky to have, which most schools don't have, but designed from scratch with every element being pure Montessori and student well-being from the get-go. That would be what I would do.
Raewyn, I also want to ask about your eldest, who just graduated, who's there at Bannockburn from a very young age, and just left the school this is 2020, so the age of coronavirus.
Yes.
If he could wave a magic wand as well and take with him something from Bannockburn to his next school, what would be most important to him, you think?
What would be most important to him? I mean, I think that what he doesn't totally fully appreciate, because his experience has been only Bannockburn, is the patience and individual attention that he has as a student at Bannockburn. So I would wish for him for that to continue, and I think he would too, if he was if he didn't just accept it that that's just the way how things are. Because I think that going there, they just sort of accept that teachers love you and are patient with you, and will do whatever it takes to get you through a tough concept, or whatever it might be. So I think maybe it would be that, teachers like that.
Raewyn, I want to be respectful of your time, but before letting you go, I give you the steering wheel. I'm wondering, is there anything on your mind, on your radar, anything that I haven't asked you yet that I ought to?
I think that one of the things that I would want people to know is that you don't have to know a lot about or feel super informed about what Montessori is to come and see it and learn and see if it would sort of suit you and your family. Because initially it was maybe like just ever so slightly intimidating, the idea that it was a philosophy that I didn't know that much about. There's certainly families who come to the school whose parents were Montessori educated, and so they're looking from the get-go for a Montessori, institution and education for their children. But I guess I would say I wouldn't want anyone to feel out of place if they're experiencing it for the first time or learning about it for the first time, because there's a lot of families like that too.
Raewyn, do you find that there are certain common questions that you hear from other parents who might be asking you about Bannockburn?
So what I hear, because when we first started, we were the family with all these little small kids, and we look up to these kids that seemed huge, in graduating from grade 6, and now kind of with a graduate, it's sort of funny to be one of those families now who's got these bigger kids. And so I think a lot of the questions I get are about that stage. So people feel pretty comfortable that they know what the toddler program's about, maybe the primary program. And then there's a lot of questions about the upper elementary program, which is grade 4 to 6, and how they do there academically and how it prepares them for their next school. So, there's a lot of thought about what happens after Bannockburn, since it only does go to grade 6, and how competitive are the Bannockburn students in terms of getting into their next schools, many of which who are applying to other independent schools. And so I'd say that that's a sort of a common question I get about how is the academic sort of preparation and that kind of thing in the upper elementary level. And so, it's been encouraging to see how the other students have gone ahead, but this year was was great. Like my son did very well. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about other schools in our interview, but he applied to Crescent and UCC. He got into both of those schools. I think all the graduates got into schools of their choice, ranging from, you know, Havergal and Branksome and VSS and UCC and Crescent and Greenwood, and, you know, a lot of competitive schools that are tough to get into. So I think that when the younger families at the school can sort of see the success that kids have staying at the school and graduating after completing the full program, as well as just seeing them at assemblies, like they're giving, you know, they're in front of 200 people and plus their parents, and many of whom they don't know those parents specifically, but that are, you know, confidently, you know, giving oral presentations, you know, and things like that. Like the graduates are impressive. So I think that's where the questions are, is sort of like, what's that upper L program like, and how does it prepare them for, you know, the next step after Bannockburn?
Well, and Raewyn, like you say, the answer to this question you hear so much is how prepared are they for the next step, is the graduates are impressive. We talked earlier about that progression, that going from little building blocks, literally little elements of learning, piecing them together year after year. What does that look like in those final years of the school? How is that approach rewarded academically?
Yeah, so they're so well prepared. Like the Bannockburn curriculum, it, you know, tends to be above where the, you know, Ontario standard curriculum for whatever grade you want to pick, grade 5, grade 6, whatever. So I know my son this year was learning math. It was certainly grade 7 and grade 8 level algebra and geometry and things like that. And it's not that it's not that I need him to be knowing those things now, but do I need, you know, but he's going to be, the things I hear, I guess I would say, from the parents who went before me, you know, how's your child doing at their next school? Were they well prepared? Are they keeping up with people? You know, are they, how are they adjusting to a school that's maybe more didactic and not, you know, the Montessori philosophy? Like, how are they managing? And they're so well prepared. They're, you know, we've had students that in their first year of their new schools, were the student of the year and were, you know, well-rounded, were awarded for well-roundedness and academic excellence. Like they thrive at their new schools. They're so well prepared. So which is reassuring, because it, you know, like I say, it doesn't go on forever. I wish it could, you know, teach them everything, all the grades, right? But it just goes to grade 6. So it's reassuring to know that if they have to leave, they're really truthfully ultra well prepared for their next places they go.
Raewyn, for a parting shot before letting you go, I'm wondering if you would have some words of wisdom, not for other parents, but for yourself at that time, years and years ago, when you were first making that decision of whether or not Bannockburn was the right place for your family.
You know, I think I would tell my past self just to trust myself more, because my gut feeling, like I say, walking in there was, this is beautiful. There's so many wonderful things happening, even at this little toddler age. And not that it changed things, but just, you know, that I should have had more confidence. Like, not that it wasn't good to revisit things as we went along, but you know, that my sort of just tell my old self that my gut feeling was right, you know, and there were discussions in the family about, you know, do you need to have a private education for kids that are so small? Like, save your money or your funds or your resources for high school. Like, high school is the more important thing. Focus on that. And my gut feeling at the time was, no, like, I think that it really is important to get all these values and approach to learning, you know, and target it when kids are young. And I feel like, yeah, I'm happy that we ended up deciding that. And I, you know, we sort of had a little back and forth about it at times, my husband and I, about the value of things when you're at this young stage compared to the high school stage. But I'm so glad we invested in the young stage. Like, they're great students and they love school. And so, you know, I'm glad that we stayed with it, and that the gut decision was right. And I would just say, that I would have maybe just liked to have felt more confident about it instead of feeling tentative each year, you know, which is really sort of more the thing for the first one going through. Like now knowing what's coming for the other two, like, you know, it's a done deal kind of thing. I know it's going to be great.